if there's anybody new to these presentation talks, we do a review, so I hope that would be okay. Otherwise, let us know. You're muted. Yes.
I hope this helps.
Yes. Perfect.
Yeah. Okay. Again, welcome to presentation and talk about stakeholder mapping. We have been working with stakeholder mapping for quite some time, around a year, actually, maybe. I will talk a little about the background of why we're doing this, for the different reasons why we are doing this. And I will also try to give some more general feedback on what we have seen from the results of the stakeholder mapping so far. And after that, I hope Ida and Alistair will fill in a little on the tools and how we have worked with some of the data and what perspectives we see in that, and how you maybe also can get some inspiration to how you can work with your own mapping and your own data after this. And then in the end, we will finish up some more general reflections and ideas. I need to go back to my presentation mode. So, one of the reasons why we are doing this is because we promised to do a mapping activity in our project application. And this is the text taken from a little open for interpretation, how you can do this and what you can include in the mapping of our local areas. And I think it's also very important to take a note that it's not only a mapping of stakeholders, but also a mapping of other local resources and potentials. And as we talked a lot about, you who participated in the hub pitches, we do see more and more that these more cultural aspects of things means a lot. So it's a very good idea to take a note of that also in describing your local areas. The activity is supposed to be a data collection activity, and I think we are into that. And the target was 10, meaning that each hub and each potential hub should be involved in this activity with mapping our local areas. And if we start out by taking the more formal approach, then of course to kind of fill out this indicator, we need to do something with the data we have received from most of the hubs. In the project manager group, we have been discussing a little how to do this, and we want to keep it on a more general level, also because we promised all of you that we will not share your specific data with externals. So we would like to make like a summary or conclusion from our idea about what kind of data we received from each of you, and also some summary on the individual hub level. One of the things we can do is to make it more quantitative by simply counting each category and see how many stakeholders you registered in each category. And of course, it will also be a part of the reporting back to the Interact system that we developed the tool and how we have used this in this activity. So this is the more boring part of the mapping activity and how we reach our targets in the project. A little upon what Stakeholder is and what options it offers to us, what possibilities we see by getting to know our stakeholders better. So basically, you can just say that stakeholder mapping is a way to identify and understand those people and organizations that you have around your organization, and those who in some way or well, quite obvious. It might be now also this goal of making things more multi-helix and also using all the potentials and resources we have with people that we know and have links to in our networks. It's also good to know the character of your relations to those people around you, and maybe also get ideas on how to make these relations stronger or more valuable for both parties. So, as promised, we have made what we call a quality check, and it's not because it's going very deep into your data, but we have checked your mapping tools and make like necessarily so that you maybe all agree about this, but it's at least some of the ideas. And I can here show you an example, and I used our own example on when we read the data from our mapping tool. We find some more general things. In our case, it's maybe not a huge surprise, but as we have mentioned many times, we have a long tradition for working closely with academia and also maybe other authorities, but we are not that strong on having formalized relations to NGOs or associations or other parts of civil society. So it's kind of the feedback that you will get from us on how we read some of your data. And then we have a more maybe more loose things or ideas or suggestions or questions. What does it mean that a lot of the case on projects? What happens when the projects finish? How do we then keep the relation to key stakeholders when you have this special kind of relation to other partners? How do you build on that to make relations more strong? So we have made this kind of check on all your tools, what you have sent to us back in December, and you will be able to receive and make dialogue with on what we read from that. At the full picture on all the mappings that Many are what maybe things we would expect to see too, but again, to raise the awareness about it and maybe also to get an idea about what challenges there might be or what potentials you can maybe see based on your stakeholder mapping. And one thing that many of us have registered and maybe what we can also read out is that quite a lot of the stakeholders might belong to several groups. So it's not very easy, especially in the smaller communities, to kind of label everybody in a very specific way, because you can allocate some of these individuals to different groups. And this is considering the SIRR project that in many of our cases it's people who can be both business owners and part of civil society and maybe even politicians, so they can have many roles at the same time. And that can, of course, then also offer a challenge when you're trying to work together with some of these stakeholders. Another aspect that is not always maybe easy to read from the stakeholder mappings, but more from an idea when we kind of then dig a little bit deeper. And some of you have also put your personal contacts from different organizations into the tool. So that it can sometimes also there be a little difficult to see the difference between people and organizations, and also to interpret if a relation is on the more personal level relationships. I don't think this comes as a big surprise either, but it's just maybe something that could be important to take a note of, especially if some of these links or relations are very important to your organizations. If they're based only on personal relations, there might be a challenge in the long term if persons change, go to another place, whatever, disappear from the organizations. How do you then build or rebuild a relationship to the organization instead of only on the personal level? As I mentioned already, for some of the organizations, it's very visible that links or relationships to stake. And again, there might then be a challenge. What happens when the project finish? Can you then continue the relationship? Is it anchored in an organization, or again, is it more on the personal level with those you work together with in a specific project? So it's worth considering how you can maybe build already when having the project. How can you maybe build a stronger relationship to partner organizations and make them function even in a longer term? Is also a little about what character have, how it's connected to the character of your hub. If you offer a meeting place yourself, it's maybe easier also to strengthen your relationships to people coming to your I'm wrong, but I think this idea of coming from a place where you had a more natural place for stakeholders to reach you, and now to another place where it's more part of a formalized environment inside the municipality, it's more difficult also to build on the relationship with stakeholders, because you kind of embed yourself in another role because the physical meeting place has changed.
Yeah, would you like me to just comment that?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. No, but absolutely. It does have pros and cons, but we come with a context now that is not the same as it was before, and the municipality is often associated with a bit more negative feelings, one could say. However, there are some interesting learnings that we have more meetings at the actual stakeholders, and the meetings are more authentic and interesting because they're at the actual stakeholder. However, you cannot have that many meetings at the same stakeholder. They have not depend on them, but it's interesting to note how authentic and more lively the discussions get when you are actually at the FF Nord and in the trålverk there, instead of a central symbiosis building, which also has its absolute pros. So a mix of meetings at the stakeholders, meeting in the environments where things are happening, and also these bigger meetings would be the ideal for us, at least, I think.
Great. Another aspect, and this is also a little based on its interpretation on the data we receive from you. Sometimes it's not very easy to clearly conclude if a stakeholder is actually a stakeholder that you have a relationship to, or it's more just like a stakeholder that you know exists. So some of the hubs have registered a lot stakeholders, but it's unclear to see how close or how formalized the relationship really is to the hub. And it's not because it's necessarily wrong to look at the potentials. We also asked you to look at that, but I think after that it's important to have reflections on how deep your relations are, and if there are some of these potential stakeholders that you actually want to build stronger relationships with. So it's not necessarily a goal in itself to have a lot, but it's important to consider the value you have from your relationships with stakeholders. And then lastly, as mentioned a few times, we do like you to look into this with culture and environment, and a lot of you did have some reflection and use the part of the tool to work with culture and commons and describe some of the characteristics of organizations and stakeholders and the local culture. So please continue with that. And as I also mentioned before, we saw at the hub pitches that this idea about culture and communication and how to make diverse communication with different kinds of stakeholders or groups or people in your local area, how important it is to be aware of the differences and how to dig deeper into this. And of course also to consider how can we as hubs make better use of our awareness of the meaning of local culture and different aspects of cultural differences in the local areas. So it's important to keep this in mind and also use that part of the mapping tool. It's not only about the specific stakeholders, but also what kind of they represent in your areas. So this was a little about what we learned from the data you delivered to us so far. And as it has been mentioned many times, the idea is that we continue to use the tools and work all the way through the project with getting to know our stakeholders better and working with the data, and also maybe see become more multi-helix, whatever that means. So I will jump out of this. Tools we used, you as hubs do of course know them already, but both Gitte and Alistair has worked on building on top of the tools. So now we are back at another level. Now I need to get rid of my presentation just to be sure that we have that covered. So Gitte and Alistair, would you like to fill in and say a little about the tools and the background for what we have done so far?
I suppose my intervention about the Miro board is better at the end, no? Gitte?
Yeah,
Could
maybe first,
start,
Gitte,
no?
if you say a little about how it has.
I can start because we had this assignment to do a kind of registration of stakeholders, and yeah, how do you do that? So I suggested that I could start to do a kind of Excel sheet, and not because I'm expert in stakeholders at all, but I had several meetings with the Læsø Hub and the Sotenes Hub and the Skagen Hub, and together we developed a kind of Excel structure, and I heard what people like to have in this stakeholder mapping sheets. And for example, in Skagen, they like to have the first column about more comments about what is going on, and for example, jobs they might have in their coming in their way. So they like column. For example, they like to have a little different kind of stakeholder mapping. So that is fine. And then we marked, based on novel from Læsø Hub, we developed this column where we can mark 4 numbers from 1 to 4. And by that numbers, we can share the stakeholders into several groups and find out how important are they to the hubs, and how is the stakeholders' behavior to the hub, for example. So yeah.
Are you showing something on your screen, or are you?
No, I am not allowed to
Okay,
share.
sorry. Yeah, I thought you were sharing and we couldn't see it. No.
So yeah, and then you all filled in, almost all of you filled in some content in the stakeholders. Yeah, and then Michael, he collected all the stakeholder maps, and in this summer period of time, I collected them into one main Excel sheet, and in that Excel sheet I deleted all confidential names and links, for example mails, and yeah, more private issues that are not allowed to be shared. And And then we have finally the columns where we could see the positions and how are the stakeholders divided into the 4 groups, so to say. Yeah. And based on that main sheet, Alistair has tried to work with the numbers and the content to put it into a more visualizations Miro platform that he liked to work with. And to be honest, I do not know, Alistair, how you have, if you have managed to do something with this platform based on the numbers. So maybe you can take over from here and
I'll take it from here. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, yeah. The thing is, as you see, the Excel table program the Excel table to arrange the stakeholders into groups depending on the, let's say, the position they take. If they are stakeholders that need to be kept informed, or if they should be managed closely depending on the importance and the influence, or depending on their behavior, if they're positive and highly engaged, if they're champions, or if they are negative and highly engaged and they're destructive or dangerous. So they could probably organize something or program something that groups the stakeholders. That is not a problem, but that is not very playful, or it doesn't take really of a game, which is, in our opinion, a bit more interesting to plan strategy. So I expect to with the, let's say, with the intention to motivate you to finish off, to motivate the hubs to finish off their stakeholder mapping, including all of these positions, to be able to then, let's say, work with the information, no? And not only have a long list of somehow categorized stakeholders, but also be able to play around and think, what do we do with them? What information engagement strategy is to be taken on to work with a stakeholder? So I'm going to give you a short walkthrough so you see the value, or hopefully see some value in the approach. And if you think it's good, then all the hubs that haven't finished off the tables can do it, and we will provide with the for each hub. So all your, let's say, confidential information is kept in that one board. No? So what did we do? As you see here, this is the summary. This is an example with Skagen. These are some of their stakeholders. There are some more, just so you know. The main information that's going to Miro is called a sector. The summary attitude and their engagement. So first step was to bulk import this Excel list into Miro and create little sticky notes. Those are all of the Skagen, or at least all the listed Skagen, been color-coded depending on what they call, what sector they belong to, on the sector category. So you have them on board, you can maybe notice that there is, let's say, a big amount of public organizations in a specific quadrant. So stakeholder position, depending on the, I'm going to zoom, This is about the stakeholder position, which is determined by their influence, if they have high influence up here, if they have low influence, and then their importance, if they have low importance or high importance. And here you have a 4-quadrant matrix that just summarizes the combination of both, and you have stakeholders that are to be kept satisfied, to be monitored, to be managed closely because they're both influential and low influence but high importance. As you notice here, Skagen has let's say this quadrant. Understanding might give you also some learnings after, or let's say his own reflections after playing around with the board. So okay, then what did I do? I looked into the Excel and sorted them depending on what let's say the numbers that Skagen colleagues had given to the stakeholders and put them on the board. And we see that there is a number of stakeholders that have to be managed closely. Banker, is that the plural for banks? Banks in general? Don't know. Yeah. As being an educational organization, this is the union.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what is ERS? I mean,
it's the business association, the local business association. Yeah.
That was going to be my tip, but I didn't. Friedrichshafen Kommune. Okay. Yeah. So okay, this is nice to have. You can maybe don't know, notice that you have a group of stakeholders that is especially present in one area. For example, academic and educational seem all to be very important, but not influential at all, which is interesting because Skagen is in itself originally an educational organization. But okay, I don't know. Any really influential and unimportant stakeholders, no? Yeah, you can give us also let's say your learnings after I'm finished.
I will afterwards.
So yeah, so this is interesting. This is the stakeholder position, but I think that even more interesting is when we move to the next board, and this board shows us the stakeholder behavior. It is built by the attitude and the engagement of the stakeholders. And to move to this board, what I did was to arrange or to give all of the stakeholders, sticky notes in this case, a special tag. So knowing that these are the managed closely stakeholders, you can give via Miro these stakeholders a tag, which is table, and positioning them on this board. And depending on their attitude and engagement, stakeholders to which, and I changed a little bit the wording from the original Excel, there is a group of stakeholders whose participation could be encouraged because they have low engagement but a positive attitude. We have a series of stakeholders to which our relationship, or let's say the value, why we are connected to them, and engage and redirect their energy because they are dangerous, highly engaged, and destructive, negative attitude. And we have a lot of stakeholders in this very interesting. They already have a positive attitude, and then I subclustered the stakeholders, let's say attending, a series of stakeholders that originally were called keep informed. That means they are not very influential, but important. And probably the strategy to empower and involve them, because they are less influential, is different from those who are both important and influential, and different to those who are not important, not influential, right? So these subclusters make you think about, okay, why, how do we, if we want to put our effort into it, do we need dedicated, differentiated steps, communication strategy to move stakeholders from one, or to try and move them from one quadrant to the other? And obviously we could, no, but it's not so obvious, but an idea would be to say, okay, main strategy to move attitude towards us. Have they understood why we are important for our area of remit? Do they have conflicting interests when we perform and are on the picture in the newspaper? Do they feel pushed into the background? Move them up here. Can we improve their attitude? So this is the state of thinking currently. It's a tool that we could provide for everyone. And yeah, I think it's really interesting. And my
Thank you, Alistair. First, I agree with you on this idea that making it about from you get the same data when reading your original mapping in the Excel file. You kind of get the same kind of conclusion, but you don't see it in this visual way. So you don't see the grouping of your different stakeholders in the same very clear way for this. And first of all, it of course gives you the option of reconsidering, did I think right when I made the original mapping of this and put everything in the right category, or did I make mistakes, or did I think in another way now when I see it on this from this visual point of view? Yeah, Jens, you have a comment?
Yes, I would like to say that it's a very, very fine material you have made until now. I have an interesting question. Is it possible when you look at some of these, now I take the banks as an example because it's very strange. All the banks, there are 6 banks in that area and the 5 investment area. After that, it was possible to have a meeting with the banks or with your own bank as a company and discussing from that area how to do. What should they do? What should they ask for? What should they deliver? And not only figures, but also how will the future be? And now I come to a very nasty question to you. Will it be possible a general bank out from your description here, it will be possible for you to make a person. So it will be possible to make it as a game. I think you understand what I'm saying now. Because there is a very, very big doing something general and afterwards doing it as a person. It's not easy. It's not easy doing that and saying the girl will represent the bank and she is 30 years and she would be way up. We could make it. And I think just talking about this could be interesting. Thank you.
Say that this is so you develop about how we get on from where we are, how can the relation we already have to maybe organizations and institutions and make them deeper and maybe in this case more personal.
Yeah, I mean, there are no rules to it more than there's space to play around. You could write all kinds of stuff or create your own categories or notes, or it's all possible. You could yeah. Answer yes, very playful. Do as you wish with it. I wanted to remark one thing, and then I think Kenneth and Gitte wanted to say something. You made a comment, Michael. Different banks, etc. Obviously, you put them all on the table, on the board. That would be a good example of a connection of the topics. One of the topics about the usefulness of being multi-helix, and understanding logic and the languages and the interests of different kinds of stakeholders. So, for example, Skagen has a series of potential entrepreneurs that come in and ask for support with their business plans, with the connections to politics, but also obviously looking for possibilities for funding. You said that yesterday. And if you have built a relationship with your banks over the years, you know what employees have what mindset, who's the correct person to talk to when the business model goes in this or the other direction. But you also know that the stakeholder entrepreneur hey, when you present your numbers, do it this way. Only say this at the end, etc., etc., etc. Let's say translation and functions, activities that an intermediary organization like the hubs that are understanding the languages and the logics of the different helixes can do. You see it here on the... Okay. Let's put... we...
It's very interesting to see how you map these things. It's also give you an overview, because now we are in the process of, when you write an application to formats, you have to have your scientific that you're going to talk to in this. So that's very helpful to kind of have this overview. From a story making perspective, you will of course go in and see, okay, what are the different stories behind that they're placed, and what are the different stories of each stakeholder. So that's something what they do in relation to particular projects. But then there are deeper level of stories that we try to kind of also dig into, because story making is very much about what unites people, what makes a community, but it can also be about what separates people in this. And I think it could be a very good tool also to open up the discussion about what are the different stories and where are the different interests in this, but are there also places where we can actually come together anyway in this. In the middle of is trying to, how do we look at the stories that we collect from the workshops, and they are kind of, what we work with now is what we call story frames or something, and the story frames are like different short stories or small stories that have witnessed. And the stories of place, stories of characters from history, and then it's stories from what is the good life, how is this perceived in the areas, and then we have stories about newcomers, welcome newcomers and these things. But the thing is that they are not like coherent stories, but it's more like they kind of organize the patterning of different kinds of stories, and there are also contests that this is very helpful for us as well. So
Thanks, and good to hear. Peter is...
Yeah, and maybe you said it, but is this board technical connected with the Excel sheets or?
No.
No.
There are, let's say, 3 steps that you need to implement, but it's not so difficult because you can bulk import the stakeholder list. It converts and then let's say that the complicated work would be to give each card a color depending on the method. I don't know. You have to do that manually, and then once you give the cards all the so-called here you go, show you these tags. No, so if we created a tag called high influence and low importance, etc., then it would be easy to automatically group them, because once you select 1, 2, 3, 4, for example, then you can tell it to group. To cluster by tag, and then you choose the tags, and it automatically puts everything together. So it's not super complicated.
Okay.
There is some intelligent features in there.
But it means that then you have a kind of this
exactly
board, yeah, and for example, once a month I can have to move this guy because things have been better or worse, so that it would be a working board, ongoing working board at the hub, so to say, to help them to monitor and have an overview about how is our work going with the stakeholders, and how are the stakeholders' behavior and positions, and who is important in the coming 3 months, and who are we going to focus on in the coming 3 months, because then it will be a very good activity boards that you 3 months we have to do. I think. Yeah.
That's possible. No. I don't know if tool, then we can provide the, let's say, the templates with, let's say, a private access for each. So one board with one private link for each hub provided by Sotenes on the SIRR account. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would maybe just say also now about this attitude matrix. I really think this is where it gets a bit more interesting. First of all, because things get more complex, and some of us love when it gets a little more complex, where you just not necessarily put on challenge yourself a little, that when you have maybe placed a certain stakeholder in a specific category, when you then see it in this way with the attitude part of the board, you are kind of forced to rethink if you put people with the right labels in the right places. I also think it's a place here where it also gets more interesting also for internal discussions, because you could say this is very much my picture of our stakeholders' attitudes. So maybe Jens would have another picture in his, or Peter would have a third approach to at least some of these stakeholders. So it's also a way to validate if you put stakeholders in the right place, and of course also to use it strategically and in order to prioritize your relations if some stakeholders from one position to another position. So from this perspective, I think this gives a lot of extra value that you don't get just from seeing the data in the basic Excel sheet. And this could also maybe be a motivation for some of you to actually use these parts of your stakeholder mapping tool, because it's not all hubs that went through the work to put position in the tool. But if you see value in this in the same way that we do, it's maybe worth the extra work to do this also in your tools. Jens?
Because something is happening. I, as trying to telling a story, is interested in the history and saying, why is this bank who don't want to pay for green development suddenly interested? You understand what I'm saying? Because then I need the history. Because nobody who's placed in anything of this is actually a frozen person. The bank has different kinds of interest, and the person with the bank are different. And some is a good story, in my opinion. So when you are describing this bank, you have to describe both the one place and the other place, and why they are changing, if they allow a discussion about. I hope you understand what I said.
I'm not 100% sure, but I agree that you at least have the possibility to reflect on also maybe in a longer time span why some stakeholders move from one position to another position, and there's of course very often a story behind that, like Alistair asked about how come all the educational institutions are maybe not in the center of attention of Skagen Education Center anymore, and of course there's a history behind that, and it's also for us it's maybe normal and natural, but it might be a good idea to reflect on if way to see educational institutions and their relationship to Skagen Education Center. So I think there's a lot of food for thought in having this more visual picture of stakeholders and the different categories and their position in the matrices. Gitte?
Yeah, I think the story is important, but not the story for the story. And they told me about Læsø, the past at Læsø, and the specific culture they have at Læsø. Then I understood it's quite important to know the past and the history at this eye now and do something in the future. You have to know what are you standing in and how is the culture here before you actually suggest or that you want to their culture and what have been done in the past. So I think that the stories is important for the future work, so to say. That's my opinion in this work.
Thank you.
You have to go, but we agree with Gitte's last comment. So it was good that we didn't say that, but it came from Gitte. So that was very nice. Thank you, Gitte. But it was very nice meeting. So
yes, thank you all. We also used our time now, so I hope you saw some of the potentials and maybe go back to think about what to do with your mapping tools. And I guess, Alistair, if any of the hubs are interested,
take the turn via Sotanes because I don't have direct access to the account. I don't think I can create new boards, but or maybe they give me the password. I don't know. But yeah, that I think that the best thing is to offer it to everyone because it's just a copy-paste effort.
Yeah.
And obviously WP2 leads have to chase the hubs that haven't completed it as thoroughly.
Yeah, the missing numbers. Yeah.
And
we will be back at the hubs both with the feedback from the more general perspectives.
The checklist results. You're
at least.
Okay.
And also, I think you of us it will give